Welcome to the XY Advisor Podcast, a global community of financial advisors sharing and learning with one another to drive the positive evolution of financial advice. To get involved, go to xyadvisor.com or simply download the XY Advisor app.
This episode is proudly sponsored by Integrity Life. If the last few years have taught us anything, it's that life is unpredictable, which is why you need to work with a partner that's flexible and loves to collaborate. One that will personalize the claims experience for your clients, one with a balanced approach to underwriting, and one with a competitive and sustainable pricing. Integrity, your partner for life. If you want to learn more about how Integrity is your partner for life, head to integritylife.com.au/XY.
Thanks for joining us for this edition of the XY Advisor Podcast. My name is Fraser Jack, and I'm sitting here with somebody who I've been working with a little bit on producing their own podcast. Welcome, Joe.
Hey, Fraser. How you doing?
Very well, mate. Very well. Now, good to chat to you on another episode of a podcast. Tell us, do you want to tell the listeners a quick overview of you?
Sorry, a quick overview of?
Of you and your business.
Oh, me?
Yeah,
Oh.
You're the guest.
Do you want the personal, or do you want the business, or do you want everything?
Bit of both.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, I'm a 39-year-old who is going through a midlife breakthrough in a number of levels, working out business, working out music, working out podcasts, enjoying the creative side of my life more than I ever have, and enjoying the sort of synthesis between the business and the creative side that I've kind of left dormant for quite some time. So, I have an independent financial planning business. I've been running with my brother James for many years. Since I really started, to be honest, I had a few jobs in working in financial planning for a short period after getting out of uni, but really then jumped into a family-run business that was more of a kind of, I would say, a little small practice at the time that my father was sort of integrating with his tax. And so, James and I came in and really tried to build it up into what we would call a fully fledged independent financial planning business. So, that's where I'm at.
Fantastic. Now, I love the comment on Midlife Breakthrough. Brilliant wording, by the way. Thank you for that. And what I'll do is we'll come back to the business side of it because there's some really interesting aspects that you sort of mentioned. But just yourself coming into this business, as you mentioned, you're quite a creative person, and sometimes you come up against quite structured and formal and non-creative environment in financial services. Tell us about that balance.
Yeah, sometimes I kind of question whether or not it's in my own head or whether it is the actual financial planning industry that kind of creates a feeling that I need to present myself, or has created a feeling that I needed to present myself in a certain way in the past with my clients, with other financial planners. And I suppose it starts at a point where, as a young man, in your 20s, talking to retirees about money, there's an element of I need to, pretend that I'm older than I am, and I'm wiser than I am, and I'm more experienced than I am. And that is in a way, there's a lack of authenticity in that. And that in the early days I struggled with a little bit. I had great clients though. I think they could see through that, and I imagine they could see that there's a hard-working man there that's trying his best. And that he'll get more experience as it goes along, and we're comfortable to support him. So, I think I still, to be honest, go out to these financial planning conferences, and at times I feel that there's this kind of uptight stiffness that goes on. It's probably less now than it has been in the past. I feel like it's more collegiate than it used to be, where in the past it maybe felt a little bit more competitive, like we're kind of competing against each other. But I think there's room for different personalities in financial planning. And if you are creative, as I definitely am, there's certainly roles within the financial planning industry that allows you to benefit your business, benefit your clients. So I've learnt that anyway, and I think I wouldn't have survived if I hadn't learnt that. So
Yeah. Now, when we say creative, I mean, you do, you're a musician, you sing and play guitar instruments. Is that how we'd describe it?
Yeah, we'd probably describe that way. I'd say I was musical from a very young age. I had an innate love for music. I was never diligent with it, and I never saw it as a kind of career. I think in my family it was very academic. And so I wish I probably, in some ways, you don't have regrets, but I wish in some ways I took it more seriously when I was younger. I used to play a bit of piano, I was in choir and those types of things, but I was also very shy of it. So, as I matured and got older and realized that, geez, the balance in my life is not there, and I'm not entirely happy with the way I've kind of created my routines. Maybe I need to get back into this music thing and get a little bit back of myself. Like maybe I need that. And so I'd say about 6 or 7 years ago, I picked up an acoustic guitar and started YouTubing, then ended up with a guitar teacher, then ended up with 2 lessons, then ended up with 3 lessons a week. Then started playing open mic nights, then started creating my own music. And here we are right now. I'm basically putting together a 4-track EP that I want to put on Spotify very shortly, which is all my original music, and hundreds of hours, that I've spent on it, and it's creative passion. And believe it or not, I know this is going to sound strange, but by being creative and doing those things and getting into that, I felt more well-rounded and I felt more authentic in front of my clients and less sort of uptight. And it allows me to have more engaging conversations with them about their hobbies and their passions as well. And it's probably the reason why the podcast has come up for me as well, that I've actually done this music, because it's kind of a fusion between both worlds, which is what I'm looking for. Yeah,
amazing. And what a midlife breakthrough it's coming along as. Tell us how this has, it's not just music and things that you've done with your breakthrough. There's been, the health aspects and some of those sort of things as well. The way, you've done a lot of work on the way you eat and the way you sleep and the way your health aspects.
Yeah.
What have you done there?
Well, I suppose so that listeners don't think I'm a bit of a psycho. I think we'll start with the fact that the reason that I've done that is, my late father had some health issues, in the past. He had cancer, and it was a 10-year battle with that. And that was, as a young man watching him go through that was a very challenging thing to see. I remember thinking to myself, well, what's it all for? What's all the hard work for if you're not going to be around to actually see it? And it's funny, these things just inform your path, inform your life. And I almost by compulsion would start reading certain health books and absorbing information. Like I have a pretty terrible memory in some respects for certain things. But I'll tell you what, my memory for health science stuff was extraordinary. And it's amazing what happens when you have something like that happen and you press the record button. Like you just kind of remember. So, watching Dad go through that, and then also observing the business owners that I work with. So we work with family business owners, and sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes they look really overworked and they look pretty stressed and sometimes really unhealthy. And from looking at that and seeing all of that, I've developed these kind of, I suppose, rituals in my own life that I find really, really important and fundamental, because you're not successful unless you're able to have a well-rounded, you don't even have the longevity in the financial planning industry. I think the financial planning industry is, when you're talking about people's money all the time, and there's a lot of responsibility and stress. How do you have the longevity as a young person if you're not looking after yourself? So I've acknowledged that. And sorry, that was a long-winded way, Fraser, of kind of giving you the background as to why. Should I stop now?
No. What I want to do is go a little bit deeper into these rituals, because, you go through these rituals. I actually think they're really helpful for people who are thinking about this as well, because obviously this, 2020 has been a pretty tough year, and a lot of people from both a mental health point of view, as well as all the other changes that are going on within the profession. But tell us about your rituals and how they help you.
Yeah, well, we'll start with the sleep rituals. I read a book called Why We Sleep by Dr. Matthew Walker. Here's a gun, superstar in sleep. Basically, a few things that I note now is we shouldn't be working ourselves to the bone and then actually sleeping 6-hour days. We need at least between 7 to 9 hours, and there's a number of reasons for that. One of the most important reasons for it is just to make sure that we go through the right sleep cycles. We need the non-REM sleep and we need the REM sleep for different reasons. So, the non-REM sleep is really about consolidating the memories that you've actually created during the day. And if you've got an impairment in your sleep, you've got an impairment in being able to learn, really. And then your REM sleep and your dream sleep is really about emotion regulation and really making sure that you are able to read people's body language. You're able to deal with the emotions and the stress of the day because you've had that actually important REM sleep. So different phases of sleep have different impacts on us. So, and the other things that I've noted as well is that I was a major coffee drinker, and you can probably already appreciate that I'm reasonably high energy. And so that would accelerate that, obviously. And what's interesting about coffee is that if you have any of it in your brain when you sleep, it impairs your non-REM sleep. And again, when you think about what we need to do and function as advisors, we need to be able to learn and adapt and so having coffee is problematic. So I basically drink coffee at about 8 a.m. because that ensures that at 8 p.m. I've only got a quarter of a cup of coffee in my brain left. So it's dissipating. So there's little weird things that I do, which I don't think is weird, but I kind of say it's weird because probably other people look and go, well, he's a bit extreme. But I do that. I have integrated, I love exercise. Exercise has always been part of my routine. But what's interesting is I'm trying to create win-wins. So been on this kind of like mindfulness sort of thing, this mindfulness journey, and I've incorporated walking in the park with the mindfulness. So you've got the nature, which is scientifically proven to actually reduce levels of stress, cortisol, all of those types of things. I'm getting my exercise in, and I've seen profound benefits. So again, since January, I've been doing about 2 hours a day, breaking that up. And I've seen profound benefits in terms of my calmness, my tranquility, my ability to process information, not get stressed, make decisions, all of those things. And, it's all relative, right? So I never had a major problem with those things before, but I can see a clear difference in it. So it's not kooky at all. And, the evidence is supported. The outcomes are supported by evidence, and I've read a lot about it, and mindfulness is something that I shouldn't think that we haven't heard about, at least. It's definitely been amazing for me.
So you schedule that time into your day, and then you go for a walk. You appreciate your surroundings, and you're mindful about the decisions you're making, or the space you're in right now, or is it like a grounding around almost a meditation? It's just thinking about the now rather than thinking about future and past.
Yeah, it is about that busy mind that we all have, which is either planning something that is almost unplannable, or reminiscing, or kind of, I suppose, ruminating is the word, on something that is not going to assist you. I've always been a daydreamer from a young age. I got in trouble in school, supposedly not listening in class. The reality was I was doing stuff, but it was in my own brain. And there are beautiful, amazing outcomes that come from that. The daydreaming, it's a wonderful thing for creativity. But there is a point where that daydreaming is more of a sort of negative rumination, and you need to check yourself on that. And by having the mindfulness there and the practice of bringing yourself back to the present, if you're doing that outside of work, then all of a sudden you find whilst you're in a meeting with a client and you start ruminating on something you said 5 minutes ago, you can check yourself quickly and say, "Oh, my body's feeling tense here. I just need to relax. It's okay. I'm in a podcast with Fraser and he's smiling at me and it's all good." And so I think these are the differences that I observe that are happening now through, I call it a midlife breakthrough, Fraser, because my brothers keep telling me I'm midlife to just push me as far as they can. They've been doing that since I've been about 30. We'll call it midlife. I feel like I've still got a year or something before midlife, but it is what it is.
Hey, who's counting?
Yeah.
So those are a couple of the routines: the sleep and your exercise and your mindfulness. Any others?
Yeah, so there are. There is breathing through the nose. I read a book called Breathe by James Nestor, and the basics of it are that we're habitual mouth breathers as human beings, and that's not a healthy way of actually of being. By breathing through the nose, it assists in a number of different ways. It does, again, reduce stress and cortisol levels, and also is a filtering process. The nose is kind of a filtering process where the mouth is not. And so there's things.
Sometimes my mouth has no filter either.
No, neither does mine. But it's getting better with the mindfulness, I might add. Yeah. Actually, I used to say, like, I say something and then I'll think about it later. I'm a little bit more discerning now, again, with that side of things. But also, just from a business point of view, we're just authentic. Like we James and I have just gone, well, thank God, in a way, we've got some benefits out of the COVID situation, which was a messy, obviously still is a messy situation. But, we've reflected on things, and like many other firms, this is not groundbreaking or anything, but, we've said, well, let's do something a bit different here. So for us, different. Let's work 2 days from home and 3 days from the office, and let's call that a for good for now, unless we decide to change things later. But at this point in time, we're really comfortable with that sort of mix. It's been brilliant. I feel like it breaks up the monotony of the week. I feel like we can absolutely do it with our clients. For clients that want to see us face to face, we still do that. And it's given us opportunities, James, to support his family at times as well, where he's got 3 under 3. And for me, I'm actually looking to go to the beach, whether that's temporary or whether that's more full-time. I'm not sure yet, but I'm going to give it a trial where I'm going to go to the beach and work from there because I can now. And how amazing is that, Fraser? How amazing is it? I mean, I can mix the beach walks during lunchtime with hard work. And I think, again, comes back to prior, maybe, 5-6 years ago, I sort of say to clients, look, I've got the energy and I've got the motivation, and I kind of did, but I had it because I was kind of super young and super energetic. But if I kept on going the way I was, now where I am, I'd probably look at things and think, well, geez, can I do this for another 10 years? Well, now I can say categorically, the way I've set things up, I feel like I can just keep going. Why retire? Just change the way you do it. I love what I do. So bloody awesome.
Yeah, I like the way you talked about the COVID opportunity as well there. And, I think Sam Cawthorn used to say, don't bounce back, bounce forward. And, the new normal sort of thing that's coming out rather than going back to the way things used to be. I like that. Now, let's talk about the business. You, as you mentioned before, it's a family business. You came into it. Your dad was, he started the business in the early 90s. Talk to us about that, how that, came about, and then the financial planning piece and how you and your brother got involved in the family business.
Okay. Yeah. I'll try not to be too long-winded, although I already have been, so we'll try. So it is a long-winded story, but basically the family's always had financial planning in the blood, really. Dad was an academic at RMIT University. In fact, some of the listeners might have actually gone through his course, which was the BBiz financial planning degree at RMIT, with a number of other great lecturers that we went through. And I didn't know what I wanted to do when I came out of school, to be truthful. I thought it would be psychology, maybe, or some sort of like English course, or I really didn't know. And so in having a conversation with Dad, he was quite passionate about financial planning. He said, this is the new thing, Joe. Up to you, do as you please, but I'm thinking this will be really good for you. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll just go ahead with that then, because I'm like, I don't know what I want to do, really. And yeah, so I kind of went through it, and I really questioned whether I loved it. And I realized that I questioned whether I loved it because I didn't frame it right in my mind. Like, I thought that my responsibility was to only learn technical and to sit behind a desk all day long, churning out financial plan after financial plan, when in fact, luckily enough, through working with an amazing business partner and brother, James, we were able to manufacture a sort of a symbiotic relationship, which allows me to do the things that I feel are complementary to my skill sets, and also allows James, God love him, to do the things that he loves to do innately. And I think James is probably just a little bit more resilient than I am in some aspects, with respect to, Joe, we just got to do that. That's just got to be done. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. So I think I'm maybe just a bit more aware of what draws my energy out and what gives me energy. So yeah, basically the story is that Dad had this, small group of clients, and I came in on half a wage after having some experiences overseas and working with various financial planning, great firms, and basically jumped in head first, having really no idea, no real life experience, but high on the technical, and then realizing that, geez, I really need to back down on the technical when I'm talking to clients and actually just talk to them about their lives a little bit more. And I think that's been my evolution. And so the business has evolved from being that small group of clients to being, I would say, still a small boutique firm, but very, very much focused on a niche. We made the decision in 2016 to go the independent route. And again, I don't want to sound preachy here, Fraser. I am passionate about the independence because that's what I'm passionate about. I don't expect everybody would be as passionate, and everyone has different circumstances, I suppose. But yeah, I felt that was the only way for me to have longevity in the industry. I felt that,
Can I come back to the independent part, because I do want to dive into that. But I just wanted to go through that journey of you working for your dad, with your brother, then transitioning to owners of the business, obviously, when, tragedy struck your dad.
Yep. Yes. I mean, reality of it was that, back in about 2000, and I'm going to say 2004, I got in there. Dad was there. He was assisting me as a mentor. I did a large part of the work for him because he was unwell. Again, terminal cancer is a very, very challenging thing to keep up your exertion, particularly when Dad continued to work in teaching at university level. He was a bit of a workaholic, and there's elements of that would have added to his life, and there's elements of it, I think, that would have probably taken a little bit from him as well. But he loved it. It brought meaning to him. So, in some ways, I don't think he had much of a choice. Like, he just wanted to keep working. So I took over the kind of financial planning side of it, the clients and so on. And then James followed suit 2 years later after working with, the money managers at the time, which is Kevin Bailey, which is now the Shadforth Group. And, so he came in, James, to help me out and assist me. And then we went on this journey, right? So the journey was this. We're just trying to work it out as young guys, right? So we're in our 20s and we've got no idea about business. So we're financial planners who think we own a business, and we kind of do. But reality is we're not business people. And my dad really wasn't a business person. He was more of academic and a financial planner, all that sort of stuff. So came a point where, and I'll just to address your question, Fraser, as well. Like, Dad passed in 2008, and I reckon a fair chunk of between 2000 and say, 4 or 5 and 2008, Dad was a security blanket, was a mentor, was someone who was helping me, pushing me, but not actually exerting. So I kind of was doing a lot of it myself. And when he passed, the thing was, whether I was doing the work or not, it was traumatic in a sense. Like I felt really overwhelmed by the responsibility, being the eldest son and being responsible for all these clients and questioning whether or not I even wanted to be in the industry. At that point in time, I was just like, this industry is challenging for me. I'm not entirely sure who I am, but I know I'm not this kind of sit in a chair all day and not be able to crack a joke. I'm not that person. I kind of had that insight at that age, but I shoved it all down, and I had this kind of brewing anxiety that would sit in me. And the more you just shut all of that stuff down and not attend to it, the worse it becomes for you. Yeah. And so, yeah.
And so that to me makes me feel like you had all this responsibility to continue the business. You got your brother in there, and I've got this image of, brothers in arms just trying to work this out, going, right, how are we going to make this work? We have to make it work for the legacy of the family, the legacy of the business. Is that sort of how it was for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, like many financial planners are trying to make it work on their own. They're looking at, what other financial planners are making out in the industry. And you're going, well, yeah, I've got this business, but I'm not making what I could out there. And so is it worth it? Am I enjoying it 100%? Yes, I love my clients. Yes, I love the work, but there's also these compliance obligations on you. There's these stresses that are occurring, and you're kind of always questioning, like, is there going to be a situation where I make a mistake and that mistake is, not intentional, that ends up, costing your livelihood or, your name, all those things. Like it's hard to sleep at night sometimes, particularly back then being a financial planner. So, that was a challenge, Fraser. And I think, to be honest, I would be surprised if other financial planners listening to this wouldn't have felt something similar along the journey. It's one of the, it's one of the best professions. You don't get all this responsibility and meaning without some difficulty and challenge. Like you just don't, but it is challenging. So.
Yeah. Now tell me about your brotherly relationship, because you've it's obviously working for you. I personally couldn't imagine it being easy for me, but you've got a relationship with your brother, thick and thin, arguments, telling each other, growing up together, great times. Talk to me about how that works with your brother and how that works in a business sense.
It's like we're lucky is the first point. We are grateful to our parents for bringing us up in a certain way that we were so close. But at the same time, we acknowledge that even when parents try their best to bring up their kids in a certain way, sometimes there's just differences and it's challenging to overcome. And so again, I think we're lucky. But there is this almost indescribable symbiosis between James and I where we just know what the other is prepared to do and what the other isn't prepared to do. James, to make it practical for the listeners, James is a very consistent, micro-analytical, detailed person who gets energy from research, from developing relationships with individuals. He finds the process of, presentations and communications and sort of looking at things that are more macro view, more challenging than I do. And I find it exhausting to do what he does. In fact, I would say that I wouldn't have been doing this if I did what James did. And I'd say James feels very much the same way. But the interesting part of it is that when we have discussions about what our future direction is and, what steps we need to take, there's a meeting of the minds. There's a value. There's a consistent. There's values there that are very well defined. And I actually think that's what my mum and dad really got right in terms of not necessarily verbalizing them, but by virtue of actions, I was able to see very clearly what were the behaviors required of a professional and what were the values that I should go towards as a human. And for us, altruism is a big thing. We try our best to really do some meaningful work with our clients, and the biggest payback that we get is not financial. It's when they come back to us and say, you guys did a bang on job. Like, that was extraordinary. I now can move into this house that I didn't think I could before. That means a lot more to us as a family. And I include, Sandra, who's our client services manager. She's exactly the same. We're just all on the same, on the same line of thinking with respect to that. So that's kind of a bit about, myself and James. But, on an argument sort of front, we barely get any arguments. When we do, it's usually me, being snappy or agitated because something didn't happen or whatever. And then I'm like, I didn't realize. And then he's like, Joe, you're a bit snappy today. You've been a bit intolerable to be around. And then I'm like, you know what, James, you're 100% correct. And I'm really, really sorry. I'm working on it, So that is the argument that we have regularly. And he's a godsend because he sees through that kind of frustration that I might have. And it's not awful, but it's, it happens on occasion. Being someone who's kind of passionate can also be passionate the other way. And so he looks at it and he goes, mate, I'm getting a lot out of, I hope he does anyway. I'm getting a lot out of Joe. He does a lot. He cares. His heart's in the right place. I'm just going to call him out, but it's all good. So that's the worst that it ever comes to. And isn't that amazing, I think? Absolutely.
The whole conversation around being able to call somebody out or call somebody in, as I heard the phrase the other day, call them in, is to be able to say, well, you both know that, you're both there, you both got each other's back, you're both there for the same reason. And if there's a conversation that's difficult, it's because you love each other, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Without doubt. Yep.
Now, tell us about the business. You do a lot of work with businesses. You do some work with the legacy side, which is obviously a thing of your past that you're bringing in. Tell us about your ideal client and how you work with those, those target clients, those, niche clients.
Yeah, I mean, we identified a long time ago that not a long time ago, probably 5 years ago, that we want to work in an area that is complex, that is challenging, that has a lot of value and meaning. And we also reflected on the fact that as an independent advice group, and you can see all the reports out there, advice costs are rising because it's a challenging environment to give financial advice. So we knew that if we're going to work with clients, we've got to work with clients that we can really be entrenched in their lives. So who can we work with that we feel we are, I suppose, we can understand, that we feel have that complexity of work? And we thought, well, we're a family business and we're close. Let's be working with other family businesses. Let's be doing the research, doing the hard work to determine what they need. And so we've done a lot of research, interviewing business owners to develop, we've developed a report and a special report, white paper, whatever you call it, to determine, what we think keeps up business owners at night and what we think is an ideal structure for wealth management. And we don't want a massive practice of huge numbers of clients or anything like that. We want to work with, in a bespoke way with these family-focused business owners on their personal financial matters, deal with the complexity associated with that. And that might include working with them on their charitable giving solutions and, working with them on private ancillary funds that they're running. So either giving investment advice or casting an independent eye over it. We also have a very unique way of approaching our asset allocation approach. We do a liabilities-driven investment approach for clients of a certain wealth spectrum, just to get absolutely laser sharp on matching assets with certain intended liquidity events in the future. Again, it's a fixed fee for service, dealing with trusts, dealing with intergenerational wealth transfer. One of the things that we do, I think, really well is actually having conversations with the next generation. I've had experience in teaching at university level. So I take that experience in educating the next generation of our clients in what's happening with mum and dad, but also what they can do to learn about finance early. I mean, the greatest thing you can teach someone young is to make their own mistakes, it's to go out there and try themselves, but give them the principles rather than I want to work with their kids in some sort of like consulting role. I don't think that's going to help them as much as more of an educational program that we put together for them. So those are the types of things that we do. I think that makes us pretty unique when you combine that with independence. And so again, like in this new environment, who's in competition with who? Like we're not in competition with each other. We should be sharing, we should be open, we should be transparent, and we should be pumping each other up. And I think that's happening. This is what your forum and your podcast is doing.
Yeah, exactly. Now, thank you. Your story is very relatable to your target, audience or your target market of who you're helping. So now let's rip the lid off the can and talk about the independence, because I know it's something that you're passionate about, but more along the lines of, yes, you've got this thing, you came to this idea, you came to the, scenario, I think this is where we need to head. And you then had to transition a business from, obviously back when your dad started it, there was no other way that they could get paid but commissions on things. So then there's the transition. So tell us about your passion, your ideals, your values around that. And then let's jump into the transition of the business.
Well, I mean, the starting point is just having conversations with clients and saying to them, look, I've got your best interests at heart. And then in, disclosure statements or whatever, you've got these little trails going through and you're going, well, I do, but this sort of structure that we're in is kind of not entirely consistent with my word. And I get that everyone else is doing it, but there's something that's sitting in my gut that makes me feel like, what's the point of this? Like, let's move towards the model that we actually feel would be the future. and again, like when people ask me, what other advisors do you look at and do you view to see what they're doing? I mean, the answer is naively, I tend to back myself in about what I would want to do and not tend to worry too much about what others are doing. And I think that was something of the same. Like I thought, well, I kind of know that there's some out there that are independent, but they're very few. This is the way we've got to go down. So it's interesting, the journey, because you start to think about it, it starts to percolate, it starts to get you a little bit agitated and uptight. And then you kind of think and mull and you get worried about it. And then you always do it about 6 months to a year after you should have. And that's what happened to us. And we just said, no, we've got to do this. The previous dealer that we were working with, a mentor of mine, amazing group. In all reality, a lot of the things that we're doing now, we were doing back then. But it's, in speaking to them, they were like, Joe, we understand where you are on your journey. We understand how passionate you are. We understand what your dad was all about. I mean, my dad did a master's in conflicted remuneration back in the days, like, when it was hardly spoken about. Like, so it's always been an issue for us as a family. Like, and how could we sit there in all consciousness and, paying homage to him, like this is what we needed to do. So we did. And funnily enough, like we had to let go of revenues and we had to explain it to our clients, change dealer, all that sort of stuff. And it was a bit of nerves associated like that with that, because James and I are probably not ones that like to shift and change and, structure the business too much,
So just take us back to that decision-making moment. You said it took 6 months to really mull it over. How did that decision then get made with the two of you? You just went, right, this is it. We've got to do it. Tell us about
well,
that
I mean, the usual, before then we developed this philosophy where it's like, we're not going to do this by ourselves. We have people who are smarter than us and better than us that we speak to regularly, that can assist us in our journey as business people. And so we were like, okay, what other options are there? And so we just went out there and went like, what are the associations out there? Now we're part of what used to be called the Independent Financial Advisors Association. Now it's called PIFA, the Profession of Independent Financial Advisors. We, had conversations with them around what we were going to do. We also knew that, a great advice firm, Roscoe Independent Advisory, we knew that they'd gone down that path as well. And, it was a conversation between James and I, like usual. It's like, James, we need longevity in this industry. James, this obviously makes sense in all of these pros and from the pros point of view. And these are the cons. What do you think? He's like, well, this is a pretty major con, but we need to work on this. But I can see what you're saying. So he's the analytical mind, and he's like, well, he's teasing it out, and he's like, this is the way we work. He's teasing it out and going, oh, this is not practical, Joe. What are we going to do here? What are we going to do there? And then I'm kind of having a bit of irritation with him because I'm like, you're creating roadblocks into us moving. And then he's like, but Joe, you're just being cavalier about this. And then we're going like that with each other until we get to a point where it's like, okay, I understand your point. You understand my point. This is the pathway that we need to go down, and these are the steps that we need to take. So in practical terms, it's things like, okay, well, do we sell, a book of trailing commissions off so that we don't have that anymore? Do we do insurance anymore? Is that something that we want to do? So in my estimation, I thought, well, insurance to me is just a whole nother game. You need to handle claims. You need to understand the definitions to the nth degree. Do we do a lot of it? No. Is it taking away from my core business? Yes. Can we outsource with somebody who does it better? Yes. Why are we doing it? Is it compromising our ability to be independent? Kind of, in a way. Because how is it easy to charge fees for insurance advice? It's not that easy at the time anyway. So we got rid of that sort of side of things. We, again, moved away from these kind of trailing things before we were forced to move away from them. And interestingly, I was sending checks for like 20 cents to some clients where I couldn't bloody rebate. And I'm not going to name the institution, but there was a particular CMA out there that they didn't have the processes to be able to rebate to clients the commissions that they were passing to me. And I thought, bloody hell, like how is this where we are, where, these institutions are not allowing us the flexibility to do what we need to do. And so that happened and was infuriating me for quite some time. So there were some teething issues around it, but it was like every 20-cent check we sent out, we're telling our clients that this is no more, this sort of crap. And again, I understand my dad was in the 90s, early 90s, was doing this as well, because it's part of the industry. It's part of what we did. But again, like if we're going to move forward, we've got to change. And again, it's my opinion, and I don't want to be preachy on anyone else. You do what you do, but that's what I'll do.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just wanted to, the reason I wanted to go through that is because anybody that's thinking of maybe going through that transition would be really interested in following your story as you were in Hungary at the time, going to the associations, asking those who had just, been down that path, the direction. And you're right. There are a lot of moving pieces to the puzzle, that need to be addressed, and just how you would address that. How long did it take, I guess, from when you made the decision to when you were able to say you're fully independent?
Oh, that's a really good question. See, if James was sitting right next to me, he'd give you the exact time in the day. My time periods are sketchy, but I would say it would be anywhere between 8 months and a year that kind of took to sort of get through the process of transition. Look, it wasn't an exorbitant, terrible process. But I would also say that because we had some amazing people, including our exiting dealer, and the person in charge of that. Yeah. And I'll name him, Darren Borg. I mean, he's a mentor and is a great guy, and he's a friend of my father, and he helped us a lot. We were nervous about it too, and I think he was like, well, this is fine. Maybe he didn't want us anymore. Nah.
What did he what if? Of course he didn't.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But, and it's been great.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. I was thinking a 12-month would be a realistic time frame for anybody thinking of that. Just in regards to going through all their clients and, explaining why and how and,
yeah, well, actually, Fraser, just on that, because, I think the listeners would be interested in this aspect of it. Once we decided that this was the decision that we needed to make, and then we started articulating this to our clients, almost in a way we were kind of nervous. Don't know why, really. Like, we're telling them we're independent. Why are we nervous about it? Anyway, so we were telling them we're going out on our own. We're getting our own Australian financial services license, and we were going to be independent. And they said, look, we knew you were doing the right thing by us anyway. But encouragingly, when I see you guys and you talk about it and you're so passionate about it, I'm like, why would you guys not do it? And it gives me confidence that you guys have longevity, because you're doing something that you can clearly see is something you're passionate about, is something you really, you feel has meaning. So those were the responses mostly, from our clients. And it was the same thing when we went from, a percentage-based fee retainer to a fixed fee, thing. We did that before the independence. So we, and then signing off on annual agreements. So we did that well before all the legislation came out. And again, it was because I was like, what is the best thing to do? Not what they're telling us to do. Let's just do the best thing.
Yep.
Which is why I think I get more frustrated with the legislation and the compliance controls on us, because we've always felt that we've had our clients back from the start. So that's what is the frustrating part of some of the little tedious parts of the red tape that we have to go through as advisors, because I understand the industry needs to be cleaned up.
Yeah, fair enough. Now, mate, one of the things we touched on earlier was the fact that you've started a podcast out to your clients. Congratulations for that, by the way.
Well, thank you very much for your help, Fraser. You're a champ.
Tell us about that experience going through that. Tell us about what that does for you in the business community that you work in, and some of the feedback you've had on it.
Look, I think genuinely, as we're talking about it, I genuinely have feelings of joy, and I'm smiling right now. You can't see it, but I'm so excited by it. And it's just been another one of those win-wins, right? So I'm thinking to myself, well, we're the world's best kept secret, in my humble opinion, and biased at the same time. And I'm like, well, how is it that I can actually give something back? How is it that I can do something that is consistent with my creativity, that is authentic to me, that I feel is part of what I'm relatively good at? So I came up with this idea that the podcast is something I should do, and then came across you and the group that sort of, got us up and running. And what's interesting is where, and this is where I talk about this sort of midlife breakthrough, I'm looking for win-wins in my life. I'm looking for my worlds to collide. So I'm doing this music, right? I'm learning about this post-production software and editing, creating music, like audio tracks and MIDI tracks and, all of these different compressors and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden this podcasting idea comes up, and I'm like, so I've been learning this stuff, and now this is coming up, and this could advantage the business and advantage the business owner community. Let's fuse them. And so all of a sudden we create this podcast, which is called It's Never About Money. Why is it called It's Never About Money? Because as our listeners know, when you speak to your clients and they want to lead a well-intentioned life, the money has to follow that. It's not the other way around. And so what I do is effectively, it's a no-brainer. I'm basically bringing forward our discovery meetings to a broader audience. So I'm actually having, a chat or an interview with these business owners about everything else than necessarily talking about the details of their business or their money. So, work-life, the work-life integration sort of thing, their work in charity, how they dealt with trauma, what they think, how they see success, what are the key attributes in success, and that's brought about a lot of vitality and energy for me. And in a way, I mean, I'm saying this now because I'm so energetic about it. I really don't care whether it works from a business perspective. I just love it. It's awesome. Had this amazing conversation with Bree Cleal. Now, it's not an amazing story to have lose someone that you love, and she's only a young woman, to lose her husband to brain cancer. But the amazing optimism and positivity that she kind of described is something that everyone should listen to. And, we all know, I'm sure a lot of the listeners know Sarah Hawley as well, who was previously Sarah Reigluth. And she came on and she just spoke about the inner work that she's done. We're similar age to really, transition into a new world in her life. Yeah, it was just amazing. So yeah, that's what the podcast is all about. I'm super excited and passionate about it, and my worlds are colliding. Congratulations on that, by the way. Awesome soundtrack written and recorded by yourself, which is the other thing, which is awesome. Yeah, it is. It is. And have you had any feedback from your clients around it? Because I always say to advisors, start a podcast just for your clients. Don't worry about the new, being the next Joe Rogan. Just start a podcast for your clients to help them. Yeah, I have actually, and it's only been positive. I imagine not many people will be willing to give me the negatives. I've really worked on trying to, obviously I'm being interviewed here, Fraser, so I'm allowed to kind of run my mouth. But in my podcast, I've got to shut up a little bit and listen. And actually, I think I've done that okay. I've really worked on that aspect of things. And I've had a little bit of feedback around, maybe put an intermission note in the middle, or you may make it clear what you guys do as financial planners and all that sort of stuff. But I think it's been well received, and it's like you say, Fraser, it's just start doing it and see what happens. And that's what I'm doing. So fantastic. Now, 2020 was a fairly difficult year, especially for a lot of you guys in Victoria. What have you got planned for 2021? How's that shaping up? Is there anything on the horizon? Well, again, more of the same with respect to 2021 in the business. It's the podcast. It's working with our niche clients, family business owners, really getting involved in advice around private ancillary funds, charitable giving. Looking at sustainable and ESG sort of investment. Those types of things have been our kind of focus. And yeah, but from a personal standpoint, again. It's personal business, but, having the ability to work from home and being flexible has been super cool as a learning and an outcome from COVID. On a personal front, again, being able to move out to the Mornington Peninsula, for me personally, to balance and have more balance in my life again is fantastic. Again, releasing an EP, which is, I love it. I don't really care whether it's any good in a way. It's just put it out there and as kind of like a timepiece of where I was at in my life. It's kind of like my album. Instead, it's not pictures. It's kind of my. It's music. It's your personality. It's everything. So I'm looking forward to it coming out so I can claim fame to knowing a real life rock star. Yeah, not sure about that, but yes. Thank you. Hey, Joe, thanks for coming on the podcast and telling your story. I think it's been super helpful for a lot of people. Really appreciate it. No, thanks, Fraser, for having me on. Very much appreciated. And thanks again for helping me with my podcast. If you weren't there, I probably would have procrastinated a little more than I would have liked to. So you really pushed me. So thank you. No worries. Well, there you have it, another episode of the XY Advisor podcast. I'm Fraser Jack, and I'm here with Emily Blanche. Welcome, Emily.
Hey, Fraser. How you doing?
Very well, and we thought we might give a quick shout out.
Absolutely. Today, I want to give a shout out to Dan Brown. He is an advisor, an XY member who has just kicked off his 5-day sales challenge on the platform. It's his way of sharing his IP, sharing his knowledge, and giving advisors a tool to build their own client-centric conversion system. So it's Dan taking all of the learnings and things he's done in his own business, packaging that up and delivering that knowledge and sharing it with other advisors. So a great healthy dose of peer-to-peer learning at its best.
Hey, massive shout out. Well done, Dan. That's super awesome that you've done that course, that you've done the challenge, and really looking forward to seeing how that turns out. That, of course, is happening on this week. If you've downloaded this podcast, the day of it's been released. However, if not, then, you go over to the courses section. You can see there. That's the place to find any future challenges that come up. That's over at the XY Advisor app under the courses section. And we will see you in the next episode.